This has been a life-changing, transformative experience for us. Our lives are very different today than they were even prior to just a year ago. But at the same time, as Virginia and I have been asked over and over again, do you feel God has called you? We have absolutely no doubt whatsoever that God has called us to serve. Not just the university, but the city. And so we believe that our call is going to be manifold in that it's going to include university leadership and service, but it's also going to include community service as well as pastoral ministry and perhaps even pulpit ministry, in addition to my own scholarship and some of the work that I'm currently engaged. And so at that time, I had no idea that God was bringing someone like Randy White to the university. I wasn't aware of that. I was made aware of that over the summer. And I knew Randy through his writing. And partly because for the last 40 years, I have been involved in urban ministry in the city of Los Angeles and beyond. And so I had simply made it a point to read and to try to stay as current as I possibly could on the literature and what practitioners were doing in the field. And so how thrilled was I to learn that as I was going to come to Fresno Pacific University, that I would be part of the launch of the Center for Community Transformation, and then have an opportunity to not only meet and work with Randy, but also Corey Seibel, who I have just come to love and appreciate, and be able to work with the quality of faculty that is there at the university, let alone the staff. And so here is my opportunity. I have the pulpit. I'm going to take advantage of just recognizing this Fresno Pacific University community. So if you are on the faculty or on staff at the university, I'd like you to stand so I can just brag on you just a little bit. Can we give them a hand? And one of our newest additions to the office of the president is a new administrative assistant to the president, and that is Vicencia. Vicencia, It has been so wonderful to have Vicencia in our office, and it's part of the growing, expanding mission of our university. One of the advantages and gifts that Vicencia brings is her bilingual, bicultural abilities, and so as our university continues to come to grips with this expanding mission, particularly in the Valley, we understand that we are multi-ethnic, we are diverse. And so even as the university has its Mennonite brethren, Anabaptist core, and our foundation is without a doubt, unmistakably, unapologetically Christ-centered. That becomes the basis from which we operate. And so 40 years of urban ministry is also 40 years of pastoral ministry. And so I've been a pastor, I've been a university professor and administrator, I've been a consultant, I've been a public school teacher. My own education, I'm the product of both public and Catholic schools. I also attended a community college. One of my degrees is from a 4-year private Christian university. A second is from a public state university. And a third is from a private urban research university. And so God has uniquely prepared me for such a time as this. And I believe that that is in part why God has brought us to this place at this time. And so when I look at the last 40 years and I realize that I grew up Roman Catholic, I pastored in the Assemblies of God, spent several years in the American Baptist Church, then went back to the Foursquare denomination where Virginia and I most recently pastored, and have now become Mennonite brethren. There is a little bit of us for all of you. So we are really, really excited about being here. Most of you know Fresno Pacific University. Some of you know this university better than I do. And so I at times do not even feel qualified to speak on behalf of the university, because I feel very much like Nehemiah in chapter 2, taking time at night to survey the city. And I am not in any way feeling like an expert, except that I know the mission of this university, I know the heart, I know the spirit of this university. I've come to appreciate sincerely the quality of people that serve at this university, and have just been impressed and have been taught by them how to serve and live amongst you. And that has been very, very important for me. At the same time, I understand that as the leader, as the president, I'm expected to have vision. I'm expected to have an idea of how this university will be used in the next several years and beyond. So one of the great joys I have currently is leading a strategic planning process that is engaging the entire university community, including students, alumni, and staff at our 4 regional centers, because Fresno Pacific University is no longer just Chestnut and Butler, although that's the hub, that's the mothership. But we are Bakersfield to Merced. And so that's important for us to understand as we think in terms of how do we leverage, how do we marshal the resources, intellectual as well as human, and perhaps even physical space to serve the city. And that is something that I think a lot about. But one of the advantages of coming at a time when we are developing a plan is that it's given me an opportunity to listen, it's given me an opportunity to hear, and also to trust God with the process, that as I broaden this process of engaging the entire university community in dreaming and envisioning the future, that we will collectively discern God's voice and direction. And so ultimately the work of strategic planning is discernment, it's spiritual discernment, and it's discerning God's will for us. And then we simply translate that into a plan, we put it in writing, we all agree, and then assignments are given at that point. But it's very important for me to be in that process. And so some of the things, for example, that have come out of this plan so far have been, the first question which we asked our community was, which aspects of our institution will we simply never compromise? And it was, of course, no surprise to me, but it was very important for people to reiterate our Christ-centered commitment. And so the question that I ask always then is, how do we, as the only 4-year Christian university in the Central Valley, leverage and marshal the resources, intellectual and human, as well as space, to advancing the kingdom of God in our midst? And that is something that we have to do in partnership. It's nothing that we as a university can dictate to those around us. We will only be effective if we are in partnership together. If somehow you are having a chance to speak into what we do, and of course we have an opportunity to also speak into the work that you do. And when you begin to think in terms of the breadth and the depth of a university, and as you know, we are 5 schools at the university, offering degrees at the undergraduate and graduate level, as well as certificates, and most recently the addition of the seminary to the university, and that has been no small thing. And our current dean of the seminary, Dr. Lynn Jost, is here, and Lynn has been a tremendous leader. And can we just acknowledge Dr. Jost and his leadership? And Dr. Jost, Lynn has been just a wonderful friend to me in Virginia, and we have enjoyed fellowship with Lynn and Donna as we have served together. And the Center for Community Transformation is housed within the seminary, which is very important to me because it tells me that the university and the seminary are outward focused. They are looking out at the horizon, and they are sensitive to the felt needs of the community and are crafting programs that will ultimately meet at a very practical level the needs of our community. So it's good for me to be able to say that Fresno Pacific University is not an ivory tower. In fact, it has agave plants on top of our big, I don't know if you noticed that. And somebody mentioned to me, Fresno State, has vineyards and orchards, and they're actually bottling their own wine. Maybe we can do something with those plants. Tequila, maybe? No, I don't think so. But it does add an interesting nuance to our identity as a Hispanic serving institution. Probably a good time for me to transition to Q&A. So anyway, I wanted to give you just this broad overview and to let you know that this university, again, given its Christ-centered foundation, as well as its Mennonite Brethren Anabaptist roots, has committed itself to reconciliation, to peacemaking, to compassion ministry, and to community service. And that has marked who we are. I believe it has endeared this university to the community, and it is a part of who we are that will remain and will go forward into the future. And so however we can, again, marshal, leverage those resources to serve you and the community, I would welcome your input and feedback on that. And there are going to be a couple of questions that will be asked to that effect later on. Questions for me? Any thoughts you have for me? Yes, Dan?
Dr. Menjares, you've been with us now for about 6 months.
Yes.
I'm sure you've had some surprises about our valley, both positive and negative. Would you care to comment about any surprises you've had since you've been here? That you didn't anticipate?
Well, I won't say whether they're positive or negative. I'll just make comments. We have absolutely fallen in love with this community, Dick. We really have. The people here have been so warm and welcoming, and in the summer they're even warmer. But the fact is, there has been no disappointment on our part with regard to those who live and serve here. We have been so impressed with not just the hospitality, but with the love for the city, with the commitment to be part of a community. There's no doubt, it's not Los Angeles. It has more of a small town feel, more rural in that regard. We love the wide open spaces. We love the fact that there's not a lot of traffic on the freeways. Amen. There has been no shortage of restaurants, things to do, places to go, and we have really, really enjoyed that part of being here. It's so central that we've just really, really come to appreciate this, and it's been fun playing golf with you as well. Yes.
We've had a lot of great ministry leaders come from other parts of the country to Fresno, and they're amazed to find out about what has already been developed. Were you as surprised when you got here to find parachurch missional and church organizations working in tandem? Were you surprised, or had you already known about that?
No, I did not know about that. I knew of some elements, you know, given the needs of the city, given the needs of the community. But to see both the for-profit, non-profit, church communities, public, private education, working together all in one place, I've just never seen that. And you would never see that in Los Angeles. And I say that as a lifelong resident of Los Angeles. Whenever anyone convenes a meeting, there's always questions about what's the motive, who's running for office, how are they going to try to leverage this opportunity to build a base of support for their own particular agenda. I've not seen that here. And that has been very, very impressive because I believe that Fresno, what's happening in Fresno, can be not just a model, but really a microcosm of what is happening just nationally and internationally. The needs are so great, and if we can somehow figure out ways to address some of those felt needs in our community, I believe we will have the platform to teach the world how to do this. And part of it is coming together. And so that is indeed taking place. So there are just some really, really bright, creative, and passionate people, even in this room here this afternoon. So that was a surprise to me. Thank you. Great question. And Corey, you keep us on track time.
Will do.
So let me
Yes.
know. Other questions?
So, Pete, would you be willing to share how you came to know Christ?
I would be more than happy to. I made reference to the fact that we grew up Roman Catholic. I was confirmed in the Roman Catholic Church. But for my family, when parents don't go to church and you're sent to Mass, that communicates a double standard. And so I did not embrace my faith as an adolescent, and that resulted in full-blown rebellion as a teenager. My father was killed when I was very young. My mother would remarry, then divorce. I'd be the oldest of 4 kids. And so I had way too much time on my hand and got into a lot of trouble. But something wonderful happened in the early 70s, and that was the Jesus Revolution. If you remember, the Jesus movement. And in Southern California, South Orange County, you had Chuck Smith and the Maranatha movement. So all the surfer kids were being reached by Pastor Chuck. On the east side of Los Angeles, in the hardcore part of the city, a person by the name of Sonny Arganzoni and the Victory Outreach movement was reaching those gangbangers and kids on heroin. But what about the kids in between where I was? I wasn't a gangbanger, I wasn't a heroin addict, and I wasn't a surfer. There was another evangelist that came out of the east side of LA named Jim Ortiz, and for those of you that attended my inauguration, you got to hear Pastor Jim share his testimony. An Assemblies of God pastor, preacher, evangelist, and he was reaching the young people on the streets, and in a 20-minute sermon, I heard more about the gospel than I had in 18 years of my prior church going, and that was transformative. In typical evangelical Jesus movement fashion, if you know David Wilkerson and his ministry, that a lot of this was modeled after David Wilkerson and what he was doing in New York. So the Nicky Cruz stories, those things were happening on a regular basis. I was compelled to give my life to Jesus, and surrendered my life to Him there in 1973, and I've never looked back. And that's how my life of faith really, truly began. How are we doing, Corey?
Great.
Can you share briefly how to being Latino descendant growing in an unexpected match for you has been a challenge
Yes.
in your life?
Yes. Thank you, Pastor. That is that has been an important journey for me as well. The journey in ethnic development, ethnic identity development, coming to grips with my culture. As you know, Los Angeles, at least according to the Center for Religion and Civic Culture there at USC, has identified the Southern California region in which I was born and raised and have worked, been educated, has been referred to as the most ethnically, linguistically, religiously, and socioeconomically diverse region in the world. And so I have always grown up around tremendous diversity. But I was born on the east side of LA. And that was the Chicano. That was the center of the Chicano movement in the late 60s and early 70s as well. And I was in Catholic school at that time, in that environment. And I never thought much about my ethnicity until I was called a dirty Mexican. And I went home and said, "Mom, are we Mexicans?" And she admitted that we were. I said, "Thank you very much for preparing me for the real world." But I just never thought about it until I was a teenager, and then I began to question and wrestle with just this sense of who am I, and that was a lot of what fueled that Chicano movement in that period. And so I tend to identify, Pastor Jonathan, with what Professor Scholar Dr. Daniel Rodriguez at Pepperdine makes reference to those who live on the hyphen, and because I am too Mexican to be, for the Americans, and I'm too American for the Mexicans, because we grew up speaking English in our home, and so I live on the hyphen. And that has actually served me, because it's given me the ability to move freely between both worlds. And so even as I grew in my own scholarship and consulting work around the country, as Dina mentioned so graciously in the introduction, it gave me an opportunity to speak to students, presidents, administrators, and members of the boards of schools that were exclusively white in the South, in the northeast part of the country, in the upper Midwest, as well as on the West Coast. And in that process, I just continue to have a peace with who I am, how God has made me. And I tend to identify very much with the Latino culture. Yet at the same time, God has given me an ability to cross cultures, and I don't take that for granted. It is something that I treasure. And so being able to speak the language of as many different groups as possible is certainly something that will serve me well in the Central Valley. And as I mentioned in my inauguration, we are Armenian, we are German, we are Russian, and that's what I appreciated when I came here, is how individuals identified themselves by their ethnicity versus white and everyone else. And so that struck me as there's something of culture that I very much still need to learn as I'm here. But without a doubt, Fresno Pacific, as you know, is the first Hispanic serving institution in the Council for Christian Colleges and Universities. 40% of our student body is Hispanic. 40% of our students are first-generation college attenders, like I am. And so I understand that my own personal life narrative, many of our students are resonating with that narrative. And I believe that as we continue to work together across cultures, that God will use me to help build bridges. And that's my hope. Corey, I think we're getting close to time. Okay, one more. Yes, very good. Yes, sir, Pastor.
Dr. Pete, did you say Armenian or Armenian?
The last thing I want to do is step into a theological Thank you, Pastor. Yes.
Question, and as months and years, and we are trusting to be here for several years. How do you hope? What do you see taking place in the university and local church? How will the engagement look between the local church and university under your administration, leadership, and the time? How will that look?
Yes, that's a great question. It's a question that the search committee for the next dean of the seminary has actually begun to ask, because even though we are Mennonite Brethren, Anabaptists at our core, and in our foundation, the Central Valley is very diverse. And we tend to use the language of Mennonite Brethren, Anabaptists, but also evangelical and ecumenical. And I believe that God is calling us to continue to broaden our base. And I believe that our university will do well in this valley if it continues to keep a vision that is much broader than the founding. So we have a very solid root. 60% of our board is Mennonite Brethren. But at the same time, I have an opportunity to continue to expand our university. And this is a question not just for our students, but also for our faculty. We have a growing number of faculty that represent the full breadth of the Christian church. So we have Roman Catholic faculty. We have, of course, Mennonite Brethren, but we have faculty who are Assemblies of God, Pentecostal, Baptist, Greek Orthodox. It's just a full range, and I think that our university will continue to have a broader vision of who we are, and will continue to work to be inclusive in our leadership, in our structure, in our faculty, and in our students. And I love the fact that Fresno Pacific University serves a wide range of students as well, both Christian and non-Christian. And I think that's part of our mission. And I love walking across campus and being affirmed by young people who are serving Jesus with all their hearts, and at the same time glancing at students who are wearing burqas. Our Muslim students, several of our Asian students are animists. We have Christian kids who grew up in the Christian church who are agnostic, and some of them bordering on atheism. That I believe we have Mormons enrolling at our school, and I believe that is going to provide us a wonderful opportunity to not only share Christ, which we are doing, and that's so wonderful. And Dina and Cindy and Brian can speak to this as well, how our Office of Spiritual Formation is meeting the spiritual needs of a very broad range of student needs, and that's exciting, and I get excited about that, and I'm all for it, and I want to continue to advance that.